Welcome everybody to this extraordinary meeting of the Council on Monday the 10th of November 2025. I ask you all to remain standing and remain silent while my chaplain leads us in prayer. May I remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live via the internet and the record will be archived for future viewing. Could all councillors ensure that when they speak, they switch their microphone on and speak in close proximity to the microphone? And when they have finished speaking, the microphone is switched off. This is extremely important for the webcast to ensure that the cameras will be focused on the individual who is speaking and that the general public joining us virtually are able to hear the web stream. Thank you. I now refer to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. I invite the Chief Executive to give the apologies received.
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies have been received from Councillors Gaskin and Beach.
Thank you. Item 2, are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Sain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you know, I'm the only councillor in this chamber who represent county and borough in our district. So I would like to put a point of clarifications that I have received the due notifications and duly granted decisions from the standard committee so that I can take part in the debate in here with the agenda item later on tonight. And for this dispensation, I would like to, on these occasions, I would like to especially thank the monitoring officer, John Tisdale, and the standard committee for their wise decisions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Do I accept that? Yeah, okay. Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Item 3, Local Government Reorganisation in Staffordshire, consideration of final proposal. I invite the Leader of the Council to propose and present this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, fellow members of the Council. Members, the cover report and supporting documents before you present a proposal for local government reorganisation in Staffordshire. 5 models were appraised using the same evidence base, with 4 being discounted due to lower financial sustainability, weaker functional gravity, or lack of consensus amongst other councils. Option A is the preferred option, supported by a majority of councils in Staffordshire. And we had a member briefing, question and answer session the other day, and an opportunity for comments and views. This was well attended, and the number and depth of questions evidence that members had considered the report and the proposal Appendix 1 and engaged in that session. This evening really is your opportunity to let your views be known and to decide whether Council wishes to express support for this proposal to Cabinet ahead of their consideration of submitting the proposal to MHCLG, the government, before the deadline of the 28th of November. I know that all members in this chamber will be feeling disappointed, saddened, and most likely very, very angry. I can assure you that I am in that space also. Now, I can tell you also that every council leader in Staffordshire is in that space as well, and they've said so. We did not seek or ask for local government reorganisation, and we all believe that the two-tier system of local government works well in Staffordshire. Now, that said, this is not the time to bury our heads in the sand or to sit on our hands. If we do not submit our proposal, then we run the risk that other options, like the county council's east-west split, or worse still, a scenario of one unitary council for all of Staffordshire with a population of 1.1 million being put forward and considered by government. That's if our option is absent. And our option A, is supported by a majority of the councils in Staffordshire, which we collectively believe best meets the government's criteria and best serves our residents and businesses into the future. Now, I've got to tell you that the leader of Newcastle-under-Lyme has very vocally let it be known that he does not support LGR, but his cabinet will be submitting their proposal. And likewise, the leader of the Reform County Council and his deputy have also strongly vocally opposed LGR. They too are submitting their proposal. To not submit our proposal after lengthy collaboration with the other 5 districts and boroughs in the South and Mid-Staffordshire area, and more recently with 2 of our neighbouring councils, and of course with the City Council in the north would, I suggest, risk serious reputational damage to East Staffordshire Council. Now, the government's timeline to deliver this LGR in all two-tier areas in England in this Parliament is very, very ambitious. And I still hold the view that this timetable may not be met. But we do need to prepare and engage in the process and not close our minds. I ask this council to lend its support to our option A to strengthen our submission to MHCLG and the Secretary of State, who will ultimately be deciding how local government in Staffordshire is shaped into the future. So tonight, as I say, it's your chance, members. Let your views be known. Let Cabinet know your views. I'm sure I already know what many of them are. So, Madam Mayor, I now move the recommendations at 13 in the Council Covering Report and seek a seconder.
Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Fletcher, thank you. I invite the Council to debate the item. Are there any councillors who would like to speak on this item? Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with the leader. We do have to vote for it. I don't like it. I don't like the way it was being done. I don't understand how our government can justify it when it wasn't in their manifesto. Neither can I understand how they justify it when they haven't consulted with rank and file members before bringing it forward. It certainly didn't consult me, though members in my group will know that I did tell Keir Starmer what I thought, and 6 months later I'm still waiting for a reply. As for us having to do all the work to set it up and pay for it, or else they will do it for us, that's nothing short of blackmail. I would have preferred it if every authority in Staffordshire had refused to cooperate and said to the government, get on with it, because I'm sure they wouldn't have had the time to do all the work for all the authorities in this Parliament. And if they'd introduced it, this Parliament, for discussion, with the idea of then working on it and voting on it in the next Parliament, I could have accepted that. I'm one person that doesn't believe that big is better. In fact, I believe small is beautiful. I represent Winshill and have done for 39 years now, I think. I do so because I've worked and lived in Winshill most of my life, and I've probably been connected in some way with Winshill all of my life, having been born in Wetmore Road, and Winshill was part of Winshill and Wetmore Road then. And because I live there and work there, I know Winshill and I know its people, and I think I can represent them well. I think they trust me. And when you think people trust you, you want to work hard for them. I'm aware that I also represent the borough, and I know it well, having lived in it all my life, but not as well as I know Winshill, of course, or the people there. I could also say I represent the people of Uttoxeter, because I know some of the people in Uttoxeter and I'm well acquainted with Uttoxeter, but they have very good councillors themselves and don't need me to represent them on the level that I represent Winshill. From the above, you will understand that I think working for the Parish Council can do an awful lot. Working for Winshill Ward, I can do a lot, but not as much as I can for the Parish Council, and similarly I can go on and on. The closer you are to the people you represent, the better you can represent them. And the harder you are likely to work for them, and the more you are interested in what it is they need and want. So, yes, I do support this recommendation, but I do it with a heavy heart.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Would any other councillors like to say a few words or speak? Councillor Jones.
Thank you. I've got real concerns about about where the voice of our East Staffordshire residents is in this, really. If we have a look at the consultation, we can see comments like there was no cost, an exceptional survey and an exceptional response rate, and quite a few other things like, you know, reach across the entire proposed unitary footprint, a large sample size and strong, reliable sample. But when I actually look at the data, for East Staffordshire Borough Council, with a population of about 96,000 people, 96,000 people, if you take the 0 to 19-year-olds out, we've got 460 replies, responses. I didn't think it was that good, but if we look at the others, like Cannock Chase, with a population 80,000, again excluding 0 to 19-year-olds, they had 3,400 responses. Stafford had 6,400 responses, and the figure from East Staffordshire is really quite concerning, because I don't know what we did with our consultation that was not as good as anybody else's, but we really should have got more responses than that, so that we could better reflect the views of our residents, really. When we looked at the survey that was online, I certainly did that survey. I'm guessing that many of my other councillors here did the survey. I'm guessing that quite a lot of the staff did the survey. So if you take, and while our views are really important, and you know, when you have a look at what's left, there are very few residents that have been really consulted properly about this and have been able to give any views. And that really does worry me, because, you know, we've got the reviews. Are we being a total minority in this whole issue, or are we being properly represented across the board? When you have a look at, you know, sort of other residents' areas, other consultations we've not really had a very good response. And I just wonder if it's the way we are doing our consultations, and I think that really needs looking at. But for this exercise, it's really, really concerning that we haven't had the response from people in East Staffordshire.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Anyone else like to speak on the item? Councillor Sankey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I start, I would like to put on record my thanks to the 151 officer who has helped to clarify a number of points, and we are very fortunate to have an excellent 151 officer, and this process puts at risk people like him disappearing out off the horizon in local government in this area. And I think this whole situation, which I think is reflected by the miserable faces around this whole chamber, it reflects really badly on the impact across the whole piece. This is probably the most important report we will discuss for a long time. We are making a decision to throw away a good system that has served our residents well for many years, in the hope, and it is a hope, that a bigger, more remote service will be better and cheaper. And Councillor Fletcher as well likes smaller rather than larger, and I'm probably of the same boat. Sadly, I have to say, this report is poor and doesn't live up to the importance of this decision. It doesn't live up to that. And I'd like to just go through why I think that is the case. Taking first the options, right? I don't necessarily agree. First, the options. We have looked at 5. The County Council have looked at 8. The obvious one, a single authority across Staffordshire, I'm not necessarily in favour of it, but was excluded because the chief execs and the leaders didn't like it. Yet, if you look at Derbyshire, the county has gone for that as the county as their preferred option. So it's not a totally off-the-wall one. So we haven't got a complete picture of all the options that we should consider. So we are making a very important decision without all the options being considered. And quite frankly, I think that's poor. That is not a good way of making this very, very important decision.
Let's move on to what the residents want. And what my councillor colleague mentioned. When Labour came to power, they were very critical of the Conservatives' consultations, right? Particularly around the Maltings. And what have Labour done at the moment? And this one, not a lot. A short consultation over August, with a few days either side. Really poor. Our response rate, as we were talking about, 0.4% of residents. That is poor. 0.4%. Look at the other authorities, and we are between 3 and 12 times worse than them. What have we been doing? Stafford got 4.7% compared to our 0.4%. It's poor. The other aspect is the consultation itself. We didn't allow residents to comment on the status quo. We couldn't put, don't do the change. Yet Derbyshire, and I'm no big fan of Derbyshire, did, and they got 45% saying the status quo had some merit. So I'm afraid the consultation, as has been said, is pretty poor. Let's move on to the savings. Right? The county and ourselves use the same base data. Great. Yet we come up with a very different savings profile. Now that's worrying. I don't buy the arguments our consultants got it right and theirs have got it wrong. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Add to that, the savings estimate is only 2.2%. This is a risky proposal. And I don't think people are disagreeing with this is a risky proposal. If you ask a £1 billion company, which ultimately we will become, organisation will become, to throw everything up in the air for a small percentage, 2% saving, and the accountants don't even agree on the numbers, I suspect they would pretty quickly reject it. It's pretty poor. It's pretty poor. Now let's move on to the savings categories. Over 43% of the savings, leadership, right sizing, centralisation, these are their words, not mine, are staff reductions. So much for my colleagues over there promised when they came into power to project jobs. This isn't good. This is a bit depressing. And that's why I can see the depression over there. This is not a good report. Biggest saving? Service contracts consolidation. Procurement to you and I will deliver 35% of the savings. The report says, assumes merging of contracts, waste, highways and care. Very misleading. I did talk to my 151 officer colleagues, confirmed that the savings are not necessarily coming from highways and care because they're already centralised. We're not bringing them together and doing different things. They're all already there. So savings are pretty poor and pretty bad. Yep, 2%, pretty awful. Let's pick the next topic. I didn't find much on our heritage, despite our earlier discussions. When this came up at the last full council meeting when we discussed it, the leader gave assurances that he would do his best to protect them. Assuming we merge and have the 76% reduction in councillors, which is what it effectively is, right? We would need a council chamber for the 92 members left, right? So it drops down from 270 to 92, right? The only one in the proposal, those areas, proposal is Stafford, which it would be the logical place to put for the HQ. So what happens to our town hall? We've all of us, all around this room, have got a very strong affinity to this building, right? We all have it. Will it be sold off? And then who's going to make that decision of selling it off? When it comes to it, we will have very little say. We will have 18 councillors out of 92 from this area when it comes to those big decisions. So, Madam Mayor, in summary, a poor report that didn't cover the options, poor consultation, big staff cuts, questionable savings. I'm sorry, but the report is shabby and it feels like that It feels like lemmings are doing what their masters in London are telling them. We're going straight into this disaster. And so sadly, Madam Mayor, I can't support this.
Thank you, Councillor Sankey. Is there anybody else wishes to speak? Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think I've ever been in this council chamber and seen Councillor Fletcher so opposed to the actions of his own government. And I would like to, if he wants to come over to my side, any time, I'd be glad to see him and make our own party.
I'd sooner stay on my own party and try and influence it.
But what I would say is Councillor Fletcher symbolises, well, in my view, the perfect councillor. Passionate, totally devoted to his own constituency, his own area. And this is what we could easily lose with the actions of what we're in front of us today. The consultation, as I say, I think was flawed. If you look at the responses, the one thing came out of it, over 60% said they got no confidence in that this was going to be any better afterwards. I feel like we are in between a rock and a hard place. Also, the consultation by all parties, all areas, is being conducted by different consultations, different consultees, and I feel like there's no level playing field. They've all come up with different ideas, so I think we're running around in the dark with it. I don't think... What I feel like is we're actually selecting our own firing squad, and that's what I think we're faced with this in front of us. I understand your concerns that this is all on the table, but if everybody feels the same, it doesn't seem the right way to go. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wildman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor and respected members of this council, you'll notice that I'm wearing black today because I really truly believe that we're witnessing the death of this council. As one of a selected few people here tonight that have been fortunate to have been elected Mayor of East Staffordshire, as you have, of course, Madam Mayor, I cannot bring myself to vote for the destruction of this council and, of course, our local government, as in, if I think about it, how we are losing, as Councillor Fletcher said, a link to local residents who actually elected us. I really do thank the officers of the council for their hard work in putting this proposal together, and I hope you can understand why I can't vote for it. My fellow councillors on all sides, if you in your heart feel that this isn't in the best interest, which Councillor Fletcher did say that, you know, for this council and for our residents, please have the courage to vote to abstain or vote against. Madam Mayor, thank you for letting me speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wildman. Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rather than get into a long, protracted speech, I'd like to refer members to page 56 and 57. And it's something very close to my heart because it talks about neighbourhood committees as having a key primary role in this new organisation. The decision makers. Now, what I'd like to know, and perhaps the leader could inform me, is funding available for this neighbourhood committee? Will it be in place by the time this ludicrous proposal gets to the floor to be passed? And I want members to fully understand the role of this neighbourhood committee. It's going to be absolutely vital in terms of a decision-making group in this local authority area. So that's a question for you, Leader, if I may, and I'd be much appreciative of a response. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Peters.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. You're looking at me as though to respond on that question. neighbourhood area committees are what the government is their preferred option, is of that tier that's sort of closer to our communities for engagement. There's no clear guidance at this moment in time, but my understanding is that elected members to a new unitary would sit on that body. There may be the sort of equivalent of one in each sort of borough or district area. Parish town councillors could be co-opted onto that. Voluntary services or blue light services. There's no mention of funding at this moment, just that in other areas where they've been, these are not like precepting authorities like parish councils, more of, like say, community engagement, informing, listening, getting views. And I would imagine, though, at some point in the future, that new unitary authorities would probably want to provide some funding for that, for those committees to work more effectively, and may even inherit budgets. That's all I can say it now at this time. The detail is yet to come.
Thank you. Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Unfortunately, Councillor Sankin-Warman has stolen a little bit of my thunder, but I would like to speak anyway. I was born in the historic town of Warwick, and I've lived in the historic town of Uttoxeter for 43 years, and I've represented the Staffs Borough Council for a number of years, and particularly this historic town of Burton-on-Trent. I've also been very privileged to have been elected mayor of this wonderful borough in 2022 and represent the people of East Staffordshire. And I look round this wonderful chamber and I look at the portraits of our forefathers, and I wonder, what would they say about what may happen and what may happen to the heritage that we have here? Our mayoress's chain was made in 1919, and it was of the proceeds of an aviation weekend held in Burton-on-Trent to raise the funds for it. They bought Blériot's plane over from France and rebuilt it and raised money that weekend to pay for the chain that we have. My wife was very privileged to wear that chain for the 12 months in which we were mayor and mayoress and representing this wonderful borough. What is going to happen to all this heritage that we have? What is going to happen to these wonderful chains that were made? When we went to Buckingham Palace, we met the mayor of Kensington and Chelsea, and she looked at the mayoress's chain and remarked what a wonderful chain it was, and it was better than one that she was wearing. I despair that this wonderful borough will be broken up, our heritage will disappear, and I am very, very sad that that may happen. And that's why I can't support this motion tonight. Why can't we just say no to this government? Why have they got to be arrogant and dictate to us what we've got to do local? If enough people in the country stand up against them and say, no, it's not right, surely that must prevail. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hudson. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just bringing you back to points that my fellow councillors have made, it's looking at local. And I feel that at the moment we have issues trying to get people to stand on a parish council and express their views. Looking at your neighbourhood plans as well, just thinking as to how we're going to get the engagement through this. We're going to have residents who are not going to find their voice because they are not going to be able to get in touch with people relatively quickly. We already have residents who are saying they can't get hold of their county councillors because their patch is quite big. We're going to get even worse. So for that reason, I think this is not going to help our residents.
Thank you. Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Like many colleagues across this chamber, I have a number of reservations about making this significant change to representation based on the time we have been given. If anything, those reservations are only compounded by the fact that government are railroading us into this change with so many uncertainties for the future of services that affect our residents day in and day out. I was proudly elected in 2023 on a manifesto to improve local democracy, to make us more open to residents and to transform consultation so the public at the heart of change. Instead, we now have a government that pulls the rug for under all the good work we have done and is a clear disparity in terms of representation. We also have a consultation where most residents in my ward did not know it existed, and it's finding based on a measly turnout and questions that did not explain to residents the real impact of the change. Yes, we all want to see improved services with better roads, but from what is in this report here, there's no evidence to show that those at Talk Park actually were told those means, and it actually means cuts. And it's cuts to services, cuts to assets, and cuts to jobs, like Councillor Sankey said. Unfortunately. And also what the other councillors said about the historical assets, that also still is a massive question, and it's up to the new combined authority to actually do that and actually see if this is worth saving or not. And it's something that I've got to deliberate on the actual vote that I take tonight. We've worked hard as an administration to build a reputation for being a fair employer. We are committed to a fair employment charter, and it can only be expected that Labour government would be leading the way in supporting local government workers. Instead, they are once again forcing our hands back down, an unwanted and unnecessary return to austerity. The proposals we are considering tonight promises cuts to jobs and the loss of assets, all in the name of meeting government targets. One of Staffordshire's local government trade unions has said that they expect an unprecedented rise in casework as a consequence to these changes. Madam Mayor, at a time when my residents are continuing to feel the ongoing burden of continued government failures to redistribute wealth, these plans cost money, and it's money hard-pressed local families are paying for. It's funding we could use to enhance our work to support these communities and to play our part and try to uplift living standards. My expectation is that people in Burton and Easton will judge me, as all of our constituents will, for how we vote tonight, without realising the government are going to impose it anyway. That being said, this vote creates a dilemma for those that remain ideologically opposed to some of the measures within this proposal, never mind the policy overall, and it's a dilemma I'll have to wrestle with right up until the end of this debate. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hadley. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Where do we start? I think we best start, or I best start, by saying whatever I say, it's not a criticism of the leader, it's not a criticism of the chief executive or any officer that has worked on this, because I feel that they've been put in a situation that they probably don't want, as well as most of us sat in this chamber. Change is a big word in politics, and 40 years in the trade union movement, you become very wary of it. Public sector worker wages continue to stagnate, yet we're in this chamber debating a policy that the government is now forcing on us and forcing on councils. And basically, as I see it, it's a blueprint to cuts. We're told by colleagues outside of this administration that courses to help people back into work now subject to a postcode lottery because of local government reorganisation, meaning East Staffordshire unemployed are losing access to training that will get them a skilled job, funding get into organisations for work with the voluntary sector and groups that work one-on-one with the disabled people. Again, meaning some of the most vulnerable in our communities are either already losing out or will be losing out as a result of this local government reorganisation. There is a big political spiel here, which I was going to go through, but I'm not going to bother, because for once I find it being in a strange position where not necessarily agreeing with Councillor Sankey, but at least we're on the same page, so we're getting there. We hear a lot about cuts, so I'm not going to go over that. We hear a lot about losing the assets. This building, beautiful building, we're still uncertain. There's many things in this borough that we must keep and we must fight for. But the one thing that bothers me coming from my background is the effect on jobs. And you've only got to look through this document where number one, where it talks about savings workforce exit. It talks about compensation paid to employees as a result of restructuring or redundancy. It talks about reducing all the way through it. Savings assumptions, reducing overall workforce through the role of consolidation and automation. Reviewing the cost of democratic services. You could go on and you could go on and on. Personally, that puts me in a great dilemma. Principally, it goes against the grain. So, like Councillor Hadley, I think right up to the last minute, I'm unsure what I'll do. I accept the leader's point because this is going to go through whatever we do. And what we have got to do is strive to protect the people that are left behind, especially the staff, and that is my biggest concern. But I echo most of the thoughts that have gone on from both sides of this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just start by saying that, look, I think I also share the sentiments from different councillors in the chamber and totally agree that, yes, being local is better, and we are having to do this, like Councillor Fletcher said. I speak with a heavy heart too. But I think, why do we find ourselves in this situation? Let's not kid ourselves. There's a purpose to a change. And why is this change being promoted or forced? You know, whichever word you wish to use. Ultimately, it is there to save money. Whether we like it or not, that is there for, it is to save money. Why do we need to save money? Because the country itself finds itself in a very, very difficult financial situation. I'm not going to go into the background of that, why we're in that situation, but that's the reality, I'm afraid. There is a huge amount of debt, and then someone has to deal with that and balance it with the services and the expenditure that the government, through the council, that it actually provides. I have to say that this is not the only area where this reorganization has occurred. I think it has happened elsewhere in the country, and there are examples of good and not so good. So we have to take that into account. It's not a total new experiment either. In terms of some of the comments which have been made regarding the savings and the models and whatever else, you know, whether they are good figures or not so good figures, I think we have, as this council, and through the leader of the council and through the chief executive, I think they work quite hard with colleagues from across Staffordshire, and these proposals have come forward. They're not. I think we have to remember, this is not just East Staffordshire's proposal. It's a combined proposal. So when you say, you know, why didn't you look at this option or that option, or, you know, could you have looked at a dozen options? Ultimately, you know, the options were developed with consensus of which options should be taken forward or reviewed or what have you. So you have to bear that in mind too. So in order to inform the decision, to have some kind of informed decision, and we needed some work doing. We needed a report, and this is the report that underpins our decision going forward. You could argue whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, but nonetheless, we needed this document to enable us to make a decision going forward. And to that end, this council, along with other councils, chose to use KPMG as our preferred consultant. Others, as Councillor Sankey alluded to, used different consultants. But I think ultimately, what I have to say to him is that the data that everybody used was the same data. And I agree with him that the answers that they arrived at is a different answer. But we have to satisfy ourselves that the answer that we've got, is it the right answer, or is the information we're getting better than not necessarily saying that somebody's done a bad job or not. Is the information that we have, is it credible, shall we say? And to that end, the model that the consultants adopted for this report was based upon the current costs indexed up, which I understand not everyone used that. So that would create a differential in actually the savings. And then also, obviously through this reorganization, there will be some right sizing, there will be some procurement savings, as you've alluded to, and they have been included in this in the savings that presented to us. I'm not convinced that whether other consultants use those figures or not in their models. So until I don't believe that they have, and hence that also creates a bit of a differential. In terms of the savings, obviously, the savings, the actual savings at the moment, obviously there's a model which has a number of assumptions, and that throws a number out as a savings. But as you know, for any saving to be realized, there needs to be a political decision behind that to actually realize that saving. And that is still to come. So you can again debate whether it's a good kind of report or in terms of the finances, whether they are accurate or not accurate. I think you just need to at least satisfy that what we have in front of us is a credible information, using the information that has been provided to everybody else. So in terms of going forward, look, like I said, this is not this council's proposal. It's something that we are told we have to do it. And yes, you could say you're against it. It's an easy thing to say when you're in opposition, and we probably would have done the same if we were sitting in opposition. But we, as a controlling administration, we have to act responsibly. We have to act responsibly. We have to respond to the government, which if you were in opposition, you would have to do the same. So we have to. So to respond to the government and the proposal which has come forward, and we have to be responsible to our residents, and we have to make sure that we protect the services for our residents and whatever organization that comes out of this. And as a leader said at the start, you could have gone for a model which was a bigger county-wide model, maybe have, 1.2 million or 1.1 million population. You could argue that we've gone with a model which actually meets the government's threshold, but we kept it to that level. So we kept it as low as possible, yet meet the government's criteria. So in terms of keeping things local, I think this proposal does that as best as you can within the criteria which has been set by the government, just purely on that basis. And then, of course, Councillor Walker mentioned our own sort of staff and employees, and we have to be responsible for them too. It's not an easy time, and we have to be responsible, and we have to make sure that you provide the right support and opportunities for our staff too. So I think there's a lot in here in this proposal. Simply saying, we don't want it, we don't agree with it. I think that's a very, very easy thing to say. What I'll say to everyone though, have a look at it. Have a look at the proposal that we have, bearing in mind that none of us in this council chamber, it's not our proposal. We don't want it. But it's something we have to implement as a controlling administration. We have to administer. So I just read the conclusion, to be honest with you. I think I've said enough. And what does it say? It kind of sums it up in a way, really. It says, this proposal represents a bold and pragmatic step forward for local government, in southern and mid Staffordshire. Once you've accepted this is happening, then this is the way forward. It offers a clear vision, a robust financial case, and a practical implementation plan for creating a single unitary authority that is fit for the future. By focusing on residents, removing duplication, streamlining governance, and empowering our residents, the new council will deliver better outcomes, stronger partnerships, and a renewed sense of place. So, to this end, I like I said, I would like to support this, the recommendation this evening, because by not doing so, we will have no option, and we will be doing a disservice to our residents if we didn't do that. Above all, this is, we're here, we're representing our residents. If we don't do that, then we'll have nothing to put forward. And I think that would be really bad, to be honest. So I'll urge everyone to support the recommendations in this report. And there's a long way to go yet before this reorganization is actually finally implemented. Let's not forget that. This is the first step towards that ultimate aim. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Locke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't go over the points that have already been raised. I would like to pick up on a couple of bits, though. It seems to me that the argument this evening is, do we vote for this even though we know it's not a good idea because the alternative might be worse? And that worries me, because this report, as carefully put together as it has been in the rush timescale they've had, and the consultation that, again, we've had to rush because we had to get it through, it doesn't actually give us as councillors enough information to believe it is credible, I'm afraid, in terms of the savings, in terms of whether it's actually any good for our local residents. So the decision that we have to make this evening, I actually think some of the speakers have made really good points about it being about the local community. I can't go back to my local community and say, I voted for this because it was going to make your lives better in some way. It's not going to make their lives better. It's probably not going to save them money, in all fairness. I know the figures are there, but I don't believe them, I'm afraid. I don't have sufficient evidence to believe them. So I think we've heard firing squads, we've heard lemmings. I might as well finish with the trio and go, should these turkeys vote for Christmas? I'm afraid, no, I can't bring myself to vote for Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm in agreement with a lot of the points that have been made today already. I think voting for something that you know to be wrong isn't responsible. I think it's reckless. And at the end of the day, we were elected by our local residents, not elected by the government to be a simple yes, nod of the head for them. And I think, picking up on Councillor Locke's point, I can't in good conscience go back to my residents and say that I fundamentally disagree with the proposals here. Yet despite that, and despite knowing that they will more than likely make them worse off, poorer, and impact our local communities, that I voted for them in good conscience. And I think it's important to point out, as Councillor Sankey made reference to, that the razor-thin margins of savings that are being proposed here will easily be wiped out by another year of higher than average inflation, which ultimately makes this whole exercise pointless before we've even got to that point. And I think it's also important to point out that when we're talking about savings, we all know from sitting here and from going through various budget meetings and budget setting processes that borough councils and county councils across the country are already operating at razor-thin margins and down to the bone on services. We've seen it no end with many reform councils recently been elected promising to come in and cut swathes of wasteful spending, only to realise that that wasteful spending simply doesn't exist and they need to raise council tax. And ultimately, that shows us that these savings aren't going to come from making more better run and efficient services, because for the most part, councils are doing that on their own. When we're actually talking about savings and the need to make savings, we are plainly talking about job cuts and the need to make job cuts. And quite frankly, given the state of services currently and where they are, I don't think we can afford as councils to have further job cuts to the levels that are proposed to make these numbers work. I also think it's worth pointing out that the current uncertainty that's been created by local government reform is directly impacting services now and the council's ability to deliver these services. Because at no point now can councils properly plan for 2, 3 or 4 years down the line in terms of making efficiencies, because ultimately we could be wasting taxpayers' money, which is going to go nowhere. And I think a great example of that that is currently under consideration by this council is the proposed in-housing of grounds maintenance, which ultimately, when that would be landing, would be smack bang in the middle of when these reforms would be coming in, and would mean that we're either hiring and going through a costly exercise to in-house a load of resource to then have the next local government come along and get rid of it, or we're going to have to rush something through which ultimately isn't going to drive the benefits for residents. It's been pointed out that there are examples of good and bad cases where unitary authorities have been considered or where local government reorganisation has taken effect. But I think one of the big differentiators between those and what we're proposing now is that those took place in areas that were either willing to go into that reorganisation or had systemic problems themselves from councils collapsing that justified the need to fill that void. What we can see here across not just Staffordshire, but a lot of these local government reorganisation cases here, is that councillors know it's wrong, staff know it's wrong, and residents know it's wrong, as the consultation in here shows, and we're simply forcing something through without the will to make it work properly. And I think that's the biggest risk that we can have to something like this. For such an important organisation, which so many people rely on or would rely on for benefit delivery, for retraining and job creation, for social care, for waste collection, to risk an organisation which doesn't have the political willpower locally to succeed simply won't succeed. Ultimately, this is a short-term fix for long-term systemic funding problems that the government doesn't want to address. Instead, it wants to take that short-term quick win to raid the finances of borough councils to fund, in a short-term manner, social care, rather than grappling with the social care crisis which has gone on for many years. And quite frankly, I can't agree to this or support this when it's putting that at risk. And that's before we even get to the point around the lack of consideration around parish councils and town council structures, the lack of consideration around our historic assets and how we ensure that buildings such as this building remain accessible and in use for the public, or that our local regeneration, such as the High Street project, actually delivers benefits for local residents. Ultimately, a project that had it been fully centralised in a far-off town elsewhere, realistically wouldn't have come to fruition when your proportion of councillors and that local representation is so diluted. So overall, I think we can all see that these proposals aren't going to work. We don't agree with them, and in good conscience, I can't vote for something that I don't agree with, that I don't think will bring benefits to our residents, and which public consultation in here shows the public don't support, particularly when it's putting so many jobs and services at risk on a wing and a prayer for short-term fixes. So with that, I will be voting against the proposals tonight, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the item? Councillor Alan. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thought I'd made a big enough nuisance of myself to never be forgotten, but perhaps I've got more work to do. In March, I voted against the paper before Council, which would commence the work we see culminated today. Principally, I was against the initial way in which government have chosen to go about what they call devolution. Of course, devolution generally means moving power away from central government, closer to the people, yet we find this is simply not what is happening. While some powers are genuinely being moved from government, those that are being wrapped up in another new institution, an elected mayor. At the same time, all powers from at district level are being centralised into either a new unitary council on a much larger geography with less democratic oversight, or centralised into the mayoral authority. A single elected representative for the whole of Staffordshire, perhaps even more than just Staffordshire, and which would include other counties as well. As I said in March, this is not devolution. I also voiced concerns around the pace at which government are pushing this. Whilst pace in local government is a novelty, the government's expectations are simply not realistic and will certainly lead to service failures, mistakes being made, and higher costs for the taxpayer. Councillor Walker, Paul Walker, was initially cautious but supportive of the work in March. He said he had grave concerns about the implications for the staff which work at ESBC, and was concerned about whether ESBC would need to foot the bill of this unitarisation of ESBC and SCC. Whilst government have contributed funds towards these changes and have promised more cash for whatever arrangement is agreed, we must not fool ourselves. This is still taxpayers' money being frankly wasted. Savings on vital services have been assumed in the report, and the work that's been done are much more optimistic, paint a much more optimistic outlook than in reality, for the points that members have made already. I've said many times in the past, the current arrangement and local government setup is difficult, and in my opinion, we could do much better. I think I stand in contrast to many members that have already spoken on that point. But to start reorganisation by dictating from the centre is not the way forward. Ministers in government do not understand our local area. Indeed, the initial meetings with the Leaders Board a number of months ago about these changes, civil servants had to be reminded that parish councils do exist, and when asked where they fit in with all this, there appears to be very little thought given to how the third tier of local government would fit in. Now we found there seems to be a new tier being introduced, a strange new organisation simply called Neighbourhood Area Committees. I say simply because this is all we have. There's little detail about how these fit in. And at this point, it seems to be yet another layer. Wasn't this supposed to be simplification of local government? Councillor Hussain and Councillor Wildman both raised concerns about heritage assets, and I think a number of others have since then as well, which are important to East Staffordshire. There appears to be no certainty as to what will happen to these assets. The government have even prevented councils offloading certain assets to prevent the rush for local elected members, councillors protecting these assets. Councillor Clark summed it up in March. The bare reality is that the unitary council will decide what happens to those assets and buildings currently used by ESBC. The leader also told us, and I quote, that local councils in Staffordshire are committed to submitting a joint proposal, and that these proposals will not include the Stoke paper, which had already been released at that point. Tonight we find this very proposal is in fact one of many being submitted from across the county, and this very proposal has been co-signed by the leader of Stoke City Council. I understand the leader had every intention of working with other local council leaders, but in the end this hasn't happened, and instead the government is going to receive a hodgepodge of proposals from a number of councils in Staffordshire. I accept this work is being pushed on ESBC, and that this council is expected to give a response, but I also recall saying that we should not do so lightly, and we should express very strongly that we are against the pace at which we are being asked to make these changes, as well as the way in which these changes are being proposed. Perhaps the most accurate contribution to the meeting in March came from that of Councillor Clark. He said in March that it feels like we are being walked to a cliff edge before being expected to make a decision. Now, this council motion comes just 2 weeks before the deadline, with little time to input into the report or to make changes. At this late stage, we simply have to say yes or no. Now, why am I making so many references to the council meeting in March? Well, the simple reason is this, that we made all of these contributions at the council meeting in March. I did, and a number of many members did, and I know there's other aspects that have been raised since then as well. And so in March, when this work began, the report could have looked very differently. Now, I know we've got to make a submission. I accepted that in March. I knew that we had to make a submission, and I think Councillor Hussain said if we were in control of the council, we'd be making a submission. We probably would be making a submission, but it didn't have to look like this. We could have said, this is the proposal that we've worked up. This is the best suggestion we could come up with based on the criteria that you've set us. But make no mistake, government, this is not the way to do it. And so the report that we've got paints a pretty picture, which in reality is going to be very, very difficult to deliver. This vote tonight is not about the council submitting or not. This is just a recommendation to Cabinet. The Cabinet will submit it anyway. I would like to think there would be some accompanying comments to it that come from this council chamber tonight, but if we vote against it, the Cabinet could just push it through in any case. And I'm reminded of a quote by a well-known national historic politician from yesteryear. We're being asked to take responsibility for a decision we are not really taking ourselves. This isn't our decision. This is not even the Cabinet's decision. This is government's decision whether they push it on us. That's not local reorganisation. That's not devolution. I think that's all I have to say really on the point, Madam Mayor, but I would like to, I think under 17.3 of the debating procedure, I'd like there to be a named vote on this item, because I think it's really important that residents from all over ESBC are clear on where their elected member stands on this report going forward, because at some point they're going to want to hold us to account for the decisions that we make.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Sorry. Councillor Sain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just a point of clarification in return of Leader of the Opposition speech. I haven't made any comments or reference today, at least in this debate. And he was referring to March, but today there was I think my colleague was making the point, and he was pointing about today's speech as well. But on the record, I haven't made any comment today. Have I made myself clear? Yes, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Sain. We're just going to take a vote on the named vote, if everybody agrees with that. Yep.
Madam Mayor, shall I have my right of reply first?
Should we do that first?
What do you think? No?
Has the through you, Mayor, excuse me.
Yeah.
Has the debate finished? Or councillors want to speak on the subject? Then the leader can have his right of reply.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can Councillor Fletcher speak? Or?
Through you, Mayor. Councillor Fletcher, you spoke directly after seconding, rather than reserving your right of reply as I saw it. Well, what I would say is that the Mayor has discretion to allow people to speak again if they would like to.
Sorry, Councillor Allen.
I guess as a point of order, Madam Mayor, in the past when somebody's proposed that there's a name vote, I was under the impression that 20% of the council chamber is asked to stand to show support of that or not, and that's done immediately. And if 20% of you stand up, then that's a name vote.
Is that correct?
Yeah, no, Councillor Allen is correct. We should establish whether or not we're going to make the decision by recorded vote. So we can either do by standing up or we can raise hands in the usual fashion.
Yes. Do we do that now?
I would.
Yes. So all those who want the named vote, then please stand or raise your hand. Yeah. Yes,
more than
me
a
as well.
fifth.
I'm standing as well.
Sit
Yeah.
down, everyone.
That's okay then. We'll be doing that. Yeah. So 2 minutes then, Councillor Fletcher. Yes.
And why I think even those opposed to it should vote for it. The government is actually going to make the final decision, and I wonder if they get to know the way the votes went in different councils, which would receive the most favour, one where there's a unanimous decision or one where there's only 60% decision. I'd also like to thank the kind invitation to join the independents, and I have to regret I can't accept tradition says that that's a conservative way out.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I suppose one quick point. Councillor Mrs Jones and Councillor Sankey mentioned the resident survey quite a lot and quoted the low sort of response rate from East Staffordshire versus places like Cannock, Stafford, and there were others. Can I just clarify that that survey was the same survey for all those southern and mid Staffordshire councils? So we did it together. It was the same survey, and our poor response, yes, is disappointing, but we all did the same work. I've also, just move on, I said earlier that I'm in the same place as all of you on this, and I really am sincere about that. I don't believe we should be doing it, and it is saddening and disappointing. But what I will say is I will not risk our option not being submitted because I'm frightened of the other options. They are not in the best interest of our residents or our businesses. Now, you will have noticed that I purposely avoided spilling out all the benefits of reorganisation. Councillor Chowdhury mentioned some of them. I avoided them. I am not here to preach the benefits of local government reorganisation tonight. I'm really not. And I'm not here to talk about the benefits of abolishing East Staffordshire Borough Council or the other councils in Staffordshire. I don't like it. I want to make sure our proposal is in there so that it's considered, so it outshines the other worse options being put in. And you're right, George, there's going to be at least 5 options going in from Staffordshire. 5. Some of them very poor. This one shines, believe me. But the ultimate decision will be that of MHCLG and the Secretary of State. Or they may decide to modify some. They may decide to take forward options of their own. We're just in that space, I'm afraid. And thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. We will now go to the votes. Do you want to say something?
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, Mayor, I'm just exercising my right under the Constitution to speak, just to respond to some of the comments that have been made. And also just to echo, none of the officers are enjoying doing this either. We all think it's an incredibly sad moment for the council. My colleague sitting alongside me, all the members of staff within our organisation all feel equally saddened, and I just want you to be aware of that. I might start off by saying thank you to Councillor Walker for mentioning staff and the impact it will have on them, but also thank you for not saying the report was poor, 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 pretty poor, 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 pretty poor, poor, because I think that was probably going a little bit too far. If I just go through some other points, Mayor, very quickly. The leaders made the point about the engagement. The response was disappointing. We did exactly the same that every other council in our cohort did. Not all councils engaged with the public within Staffordshire. Notably, the County Council didn't run an engagement approach with the public. The other thing about the population of the borough as well, I should just put that on record, that's about 127,000 people. So coming back to Councillor Jones's point, it's an even worse response than she'd anticipated. Okay, some of the... We did have some 0 to 19-year-olds responding, though, which was actually good, to be fair. Just one or two other things. The savings, they are a forecast. They're not an MTFS per se. And the shadow authority will be the body, when it's been elected, a year before the end of our council, that will be making the MTFS for the first year of the new authority. And it's at that point Councillor Peters will understand the budget for neighbourhood area committees, because they'll be setting the budget for that. So just wanted to let you know that information as well. When we had the member briefing last week, we talked about the charter trustees and the importance of making sure that those elected actually have our assets uppermost in their mind. So with the Cabinet's permission next week, I'm going to suggest that we put an appendix in our report which just talks about the way that we would expect the charter trustees to work in the future in relation to the new authority. That might assuage some of the concerns about how to preserve some of our assets. Another point which I think is really important, it's really important to staff that we use the right language around this. So mentioning turkeys, lemmings, firing squads, I don't think is appropriate. There are people's jobs at stake. So if we can use the best language possible, I'd appreciate that. And then a final point, and I will shut up then, Mayor. The joint working has happened. It's happened all the way through spring and summer and into the autumn. It just hasn't led to a consensus. People haven't cohered around a single option. And that's a shame as well. But I know that they're equally across all of our boroughs and the county and the city. They all have very strong views about their proposals, and it's just worth bearing that in mind. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Right, shall we now go to the votes? Do you want them to stand up?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I'm now going to do the recorded vote. I'll read your names out in alphabetical order, and if you could let me know whether you're for, against or abstaining, I would be very grateful. Councillor Arshad Afsar.
For.
Councillor George Allen.
Against.
Councillor Adriana Bailey.
Abstain.
Councillor Liz Bullock. Councillor Ali Chowdhury.
For.
Councillor Adam Clark.
Against.
Councillor Mick Fitzpatrick.
For.
Councillor Dennis Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Bev George.
Against.
Councillor Vicky Gould.
Against.
Councillor Tom Hadley.
Against.
Councillor Rob Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Jerry Holmes.
Against.
Councillor Monica Halton.
For.
Councillor Mick Huckabee.
For.
Councillor Phil Hudson.
Against.
Councillor Saeed Hussain.
Abstain.
Councillor Jackie Jones.
Against.
Councillor Penny Krupski.
For.
Councillor Just Love Krupski.
For.
Councillor Alison Legg.
Abstain.
Councillor Russell Locke.
Against.
Councillor Aaron Mansfield.
For.
Councillor Sheila McKeenan.
For.
Councillor Bernard Peters.
Against.
Councillor Steve Sankey.
Against.
Councillor Mandy Shrive.
Abstain.
Councillor Michael Slater. Councillor Simon Slater.
For.
Councillor Chris Smedley.
Against.
Councillor Kim Smith. Mayor.
For.
Councillor Louise Walker.
Heavy heart. For.
Councillor Paul Walker. Councillor Colin Whitaker.
Abstain.
And finally, Councillor Colin Wildman.
I'm against.
Thank you, Mayor.
So the proposal has been carried, so it's 15 for, 14 against and 6 abstentions.
Motion carried.
The motion is carried. I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you for attending this evening's meeting.